All right, so here is a little video tutorial of how to do some of the meeting level problems on our practice test. Okay, so first off, the first two problems are both simplifying problems. So what that means is you're going to take that expression and you're going to combine all the like terms. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rewrite this problem so that there aren't any parentheses, because I need to do that before I can start combining. So that's going to give me negative 12 plus 5a. Now what I have to do here is distribute that minus 2. And so that's going to give me minus 2b. Now when I distribute it, it's going to be minus 2 times minus 3. So a minus and a negative behave the same way. So that's going to become a plus 6a. And then we have our rule for subtracting negatives, which is the same as addition. So that would become a plus 5 and then plus 5b. Okay, at this point, now I can start looking for like terms. And so I'm going to start with my a's. So I've got a 5a here, a plus 6a here, and I should say that's plus 5a, underline the operation in front of it. 5a plus 6a gives me 11a. And then we look at the b's. So I've got minus 2b and plus 5b. So if I have a minus 2 and a plus 5 together, that is a plus or a positive 3b. And then the last thing are the constants. So here I've got a minus 12. Here I've got a plus 5. When I combine those together, minus 12 and plus 5 gives me a minus 7. So my final answer is 11a plus 3b minus 7. All right, question 2. So question 2, I'm going to start by getting rid of those parentheses. So I'm going to have to use the distribution property. So the first thing I'm going to do is 4n times 2n. Now 4 times 2 is 8. N times n, you got to remember when you multiply two variables, that's going to give me an n squared. And that's going to be important in the next step of this problem. And then I've got to do 4 times minus 6. So that's minus 24n minus, so I'm going to take minus 3 times 2, which is minus 6n. And then minus 3 times plus 5, which is a minus 15. And then I still got the plus 2 hanging out there at the end. Okay, all of my parentheses are gone. Now I can start combining. So I start by looking at my n squared. Okay, I've got an 8n squared. There are no other n squareds. So there's nothing that can be combined with. Okay, you can't combine an n squared with an n. If they have different variables, they are not considered like terms. So then we go on to our n's. So I've got a minus 24n and a minus 6n. So a minus 24 and a minus 6 gives me a minus 30. And then the last thing, you've got minus 15 plus 2. So you take a minus 15 with a plus 2, and that gives you a minus 13. So my final answer is 8n squared minus 30n minus 13. Okay. So that was simplifying. Now we go into evaluating. So evaluating means you need to take the three, in this case, the three numbers that are given to you and substitute them into the problem. So when you do this, it really helps if you write down all of your steps, because these are super easy to make little mistakes on. So I'm going to start just by rewriting this problem, but instead of using the variables, I'm going to replace them with the numbers. So 3a becomes 3 times 3, because you see a is equal to 3. And then the second expression, you've got that fraction, and b is 4. So I'm going to get 4 minus 2 times negative 4 all over negative 3 minus 2 absolute value of negative 4 minus 4 times 3. So I haven't done anything up to this point other than substitution. Now I'm going to start evaluating it. And this is following your order of operations. So I'm going to kind of do this in pieces. So the first piece, 3 times 3, which is 9. Now I'm not going to add that to anything because I don't want to do addition yet. For my fraction, I can go ahead and on the top do minus 2 times minus 4, which gives me a plus 8. And I'm going to still leave that over minus 3. And then my last term, I've got minus 2. And then in the absolute values, that's going to be negative 4. Minus 4 times positive 3 gives me a minus 12. You notice I'm not doing too much on any one step. Okay, that's where errors creep in when we try to do that. So this is going to become 9 plus, and I'm going to add the numerator. So that's 12 over negative 3 minus 2. And then if I take negative 4 minus 12, remember, that's the same as negative 4 plus negative 12, which is negative 16. All right, so let's go another step. 9 plus, well, 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4 minus 2. Now the absolute value of negative 16 is positive 16. So basically what that becomes, I'm going to turn the absolute values into regular brackets because that just becomes a regular 16. Now the one thing a lot of people kind of made a mistake on here was they said, oh, I know that those absolute values do. They turned that into a plus 16. And then they ended up adding those two numbers together. When you have a number right next to an absolute value, kind of like when you have a number right next to a bracket, what that means is that you have to multiply, in this case, the 2 times whatever this is going to equal. So I've got to take that 2 times a positive 16. So then, let's just leave the 9 plus negative 4, and then minus 2 times 16 is going to be minus 32, which is 9. Now I can just go left to right. 9 plus negative 4 is negative 5. And then, positive 5, not negative 5. And then minus 32. And 5 minus 32, I ran out of room here. I'll just put it over to this side, is negative 27. Okay, let's get into the equations. So for the equations, really important that you go through and always show your inverse operations. So in this first one, I'm going to take away 4 from both sides. I'm going to be left with 2/3 x equal to 8. And then I'm going to multiply both sides by 3. So when I take 2/3 times 3, those 3's are going to cancel each other out. And I am left with 2x is equal to 24. And then the last step is divide both sides by 2. And I get x equals 12. This step right here, the canceling out step, if you're not sure why that happens, let me just show you. If I take 2/3 times 3, well, that's the same as doing 3 over 1. So 2/3 times 3 over 1 is 6 over 3, which ends up being 2. Well, the shortcut is, if I just go back and kind of erase that over 1, the shortcut is those just cancel each other out, and you're just left with that number. And that'll always be the case. So that's the answer. Here is x equal to 12. Then you have to go through and prove it. So when you're proving it, you want to take this original equation up here at the top, and I'm going to rewrite it. So 12 equals 4 plus 2 over 3. But instead of using x, I'm going to plug in what I just got for my answer. So that's going to be 12. And I just work it out and see, does the left side, 12, equal the right side? So that's 4 plus 2/3 times 12 is 24 over 3, because remember, that's like 12 over 1. Well, that's going to be 4 plus 8, and what do you know? We end up with two numbers that are equal, which tells me it's the right answer. Okay, let's look at number 5. On this one, we're going to start the problem. You know how I said down here that if you take 2/3 times 3, it just can't, the 3's cancel out? Well, I'm going to do the same thing in this problem by starting multiplying both sides by 4, because that's going to cancel those 4's out, and then I don't have to worry about any fractions. So I'm going to have negative 8 minus 3x. 3.5 times 4 is going to be 14. And if you can do that mentally, great. If not, you can kind of work that off, off to the side somewhere. Now I'm just going to try to isolate the x. So I'm going to add both sides to 8, and that's going to give me 22, and then divide both sides by negative 3. And now at this point, I'm just going to leave it as 22 over negative 3. Some people went through and tried to divide those. It's not a whole number, so just leave it as a fraction. You could turn it to a mixed fraction if you wanted, which would be negative 7 1/3. But really, especially you'll see when we do the proving, it's a lot easier just to leave it as an improper fraction. Okay, because when I prove, that's going to be negative 8 minus 3 times 22 over negative 3 all over 4 equals 3.5. Now that looks a little ugly at the beginning, but you remember that rule about, how we used it right in the first step about the 4's canceling out up here, and on the previous problem, the 3's canceling out? Well, the same thing's going to happen right here. These 3's, that 3 and that 3 are going to cancel each other out. So what you're going to be left with is negative 8. And because this is a negative here and a negative here, negative times a negative is a positive. So those are going to cancel out as well. So then I'm just going to be left with this statement right here, which is a little bit prettier because I don't have fractions within fractions. Negative 8 plus 22 is 14. And if you take 14 over 4, then if I turn that into a mixed fraction, it's going to be 3 2/4, which is the same thing as 3.5. So that means they're equal. I have the right answer. Okay, last question. Now in this one, we have variables on both sides of the problem. So the first thing I want to do is simplify each side, okay? And that means getting rid of the brackets. So I'm going to start by distributing that 2. So that's going to give me 8 minus 2x. And then on the right side, I got to distribute that minus 3. So that's minus 6x. And remember, minus 3 times minus 6 is a plus 18. Some people messed up the sign right there. And then, can I simplify anything on the left side? Yeah, I've got an 8 and a minus 10. So when I put those together, it's going to give me minus 2. So I have a minus 2, and then I still have a minus 2x. I just bring that right down. Equals negative 6x plus 8. Okay, everything as simple as I can make it. Now, before I start trying to do my inverse operations and isolating x, I need to get the x's on the same side. So I'm going to add 6x, because that gets rid of it on the right side, and I'm going to add 6x over here. So that leaves me with negative 2 plus 4x is equal to 8. And now I can start doing my inverse operations to solve. Plus 2 plus 2. And then that's going to give me 10 right there. Why do I feel like I made a little mistake somewhere here? Minus 2x minus 6 plus... oh, I see. I left the 1 off of this. I knew that wasn't the right answer. Sorry, you might have already picked up on that mistake. So that should be an 18 here. So that's actually a 20. And if I hadn't caught that, I would have probably caught it when I was doing my proving, okay? But I picked it up right there. Okay, so let's do the proving. Rewrite the problem. 2 times 4 minus, now instead of x, we're going to use 5. Just take that answer and substitute it in. Minus 10 is equal to negative 3 times 2 times 5 minus 6. And now let's just evaluate the left and the right side. That's going to become 2 times negative 1 minus 10. Over here, it's negative 3. 2 times 5 is 10. And again, I'm just doing one step at a time. You notice on the left side here, I actually did 4 minus 5. I didn't use the distribution property. Don't use the distribution property if you don't need to. Follow your order of operations, which says do everything in the brackets first. So 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. And then again, I'm not going to use the distribution property here. I'm just going to do what's inside of the brackets. And lo and behold, we get negative 12 equals negative 12. The right answer. All right, let's go on to the next page. This one, you didn't have to do any algebra. You just had to recognize. We ended up getting down to this step right here. X equals 0 is a solution. So the answer to this is one solution. Okay, if I had done all of this algebra and the x's had canceled, and let's say I'd been left with 2 equals 2 or something like that, but there's no x's, that tells me there's an infinite number of solutions. And if I ended up with 2 equals 3, that means that there's going to be no solutions. But x equals 0 is a solution. So that's why the answer to that one is one solution. Okay, so let's look at the inequality. Okay? The inequality, you solve it just like you do the equations. I got to get rid of those parentheses through distribution. That's 6x plus 3. And now I can start doing inverse operations. Minus 3, which is minus 24. Divide both sides by 6. Now, I've never multiplied or divided by a negative, so that means the inequality sign doesn't switch directions. It stays as x is greater than or equal to negative 4. So let's go down. When I graph this, I need to go to negative 4, and I'm going to put a filled in dot there. The reason it's filled in is because this is a greater than or equal to. Okay, if it was just greater than, it would be an open dot. And what are the numbers that are greater than or equal to negative 4? Well, it's all of these numbers over here. So my arrow goes to the right side. When I want to check it, okay, I take the original problem, 3 times, the original problem is what I'm referring to up here. Now, instead of 2 times x, I'm going to pick a number that's somewhere where my arrow is pointing. The number I like to use, if the arrow is pointing that way, is 0, because 0 is nice and easy to use. So 2 times x becomes 2 times 0. And then I just work it out. So that is 0 plus 1, which is 3 times 1, which is 3, and 3 is greater than or equal to negative 21. So that tells me that my arrow is pointing in the right direction. The number you don't want to plug into here, which some people did do on the test, is negative 4. You don't want to pick the number where the arrow is starting, because that doesn't tell you if the arrow is going in the right direction or not. All right, last are these 2 story problems. So remember your 4 steps. In this question right here, some of the important information is that he's trying to earn $15,000, Arsen is. He purchased, $1,750 in recording equipment. So basically that means like he's got to earn that money back in order to reach his goal of $15,000. And some people were asking about that during the test. So for this problem, I'm going to use my variable, let's use M for money, okay? And I want to, actually no, the variable's not money because it's asking how many weeks. So let's use W. So I'm going to say W equals the number of weeks until Arsen has enough money. Okay, and then what does my translation say? So he's trying to earn $15,000. So I'm just going to make this an equals $15,000. So how's he going to earn that money? Well, first of all, he purchased $1,750 in recording equipment. So that's like kind of going like against what he's trying to earn, or kind of going into debt if you want to think about that. So I'm going to make that a negative 1,750. Okay, some people left that negative sign off. And then he's going to start earning $250 each week. Well, how many weeks? That's what we're trying to figure out. So that's going to be what my W is. Now it's just an equation that you're going to solve with your inverse operations. So we're going to add 1750 onto both sides. So that leaves me with 250 W is equal to 16,750, and then divide both sides by 250. And that gives me, I've already done this, but like off to the side, you could do this yourself, like if you can't do it mentally, which is totally fine. 250 divided by 16,750. Remember a little shortcut, you could just get rid of these zeros to make your calculating a little bit easier, but it ends up equaling 67. I'm not going to go through all the long division, but that's what we get. So we would say that Arsen needs to save for 67 weeks. And so those are the 4 steps. 1, define your variable. 2, do your model. 3, solve it with inverse operations. And 4, write your answer in a complete sentence. Anytime you have a story problem, you go through those 4 steps. All right, last one. Now in this one, because they're telling you like this word under, that should be a clue that this is going to be an inequality. So for this question right here, what are we trying to figure out? We're trying to find out about Monday's PSI levels. So let's just do M for Monday's PSI levels. So that's going to be my first step. Now my second step is writing my equation. So it says on Monday there were safe levels. So we don't know what there was on Monday. It says the Weather Service predicts that on Tuesday the PSIs will triple. Well, triple is a clue for like times 3. So I'm going to take the Monday PSI and I'm going to triple it, which means multiplying it by 3. So 3M is like Tuesday's PSI. Now on Wednesday, it goes up by an additional 10. So the keys there is that it goes up by an additional 10. So Wednesday, I'm going to take 3M and I'm going to add 10 more to it. Now after doing all of that, okay, we know that we want this to be under 100 if you're able to go outside. So I say, okay, well, that's what the PSI level is. And so what I need is this to stay under 100 if I'm going to go outside. That's my inequality that models the problem. Now, step 3, I'm going to go through and solve it. So minus 10, which is equal to 90. Divide both sides by 3. So based on this information, I can determine, so step 4, writing my complete sentence, on Monday, the PSI level was less than 30.